Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to day 3 of our LMK TMF Career Week, where we'll be sharing some insights on resume and interviewing tips and tricks. I'm so excited to be joined today by my colleagues, Lisa and Jessica. But before we dive into your questions, which you guys can submit at any time in the comments section on our LinkedIn post, I'd like to start things off just with a quick round of introductions so that you can get to know us a little bit better and just learn a little bit about our career journeys. Apologies for those of you who joined on day 1, which I also hosted. This may be a little bit duplicative, but I'll get things started. I'm Jackie Morrill. I'm the Executive Director of TMF Education at LMK. I've been in the TMF space now for over 11 years. I've been in clinical research for about 17. And I will admit to everyone that I definitely didn't grow up thinking that I would end up becoming a TMF professional. I graduated from college with a double major in biology and psychology. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I really enjoyed and loved the sciences. I knew I wanted to help people. And when I started looking for jobs, I had stumbled across the research coordinator position. So I was a research coordinator for a couple of years at the Boston area hospitals, almost 4 years in total, where I helped to enroll patients on clinical trials. After that, I moved into a trial coordination role at a biotech company in Cambridge. And after 3 years of working there, I was approached about moving into a new subdivision that was being created within the clinical operations department. And that department was going to be solely focused on TMF and document management for the ClinOps department. So I accepted that offer, moved into the role, and I've been in the TMF ever since. So that was back in May of 2013. I was unfortunately laid off from that company, but it opened the doors for me to come and work at LMK. Started as one of our TMF consultants before moving into leadership. And in the last few years, my focus has shifted specifically to TMF training and education. So I've been helping to establish that line of business and grow out some of our offerings in that space. So with that, I'll hand it over to my colleague, Lisa, if you want to just give a quick intro.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Watson, and I am a functional line manager at LMK. I have been in the TMF world for over 27 years. And prior to this, I was a stay-at-home mom, raising my 3 kids when my life changed and I needed to get a job that actually paid me some money. So I was very fortunate to live close to a very large pharmaceutical, and they were hiring for a position in their file room, which that was what they called their TMF. Well, I was lucky. I got the job, and my first assignment was to file over 10,000 paper documents into the TMF. And that started the beginning of my career. And 27 years later, I'm now an expert at everything TMF. And as a functional line manager, I have the privilege to lead others to their greatness. So that's my little story, and I will hand it over to Jessica.
Thanks, Lisa. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. My name is Jessica Lurson. I'm the Business Operations Manager here at LMK. My career at LMK started 8 years ago. I actually came from a different industry. I was working in optical at the time. I had just started my family. I was looking for more flexibility and working remotely. So I started with LMK in administration, and I've worked my way up through leadership. So I went from administration, recruitment, HR, and now operations.
Great. Thank you both. So we have some questions that we've prepared just to get the conversation started. But again, if you guys have any questions that you want to ask us, please do submit those in the comment section, and we'll definitely be sure to address them as they come in. Let's see what we have for our first question. All right, so we'll kick it off with what do you guys think is the most important skill to highlight as a TMF professional?
So, Jackie, I think it depends on the job level. So, for like an entry level role in a clinical trial associate, I'm just going to use that as an example, where the main focus is on document reviewing and processing, performing QCing and indexing. It's really important to have time management. You're doing a lot, and you need to make sure you can manage all those things. The TMF space is often under-resourced, so there can be a lot of competing priorities. So that time management is really important, as well as like mid and upper level roles. I would say communication, because you need to be able to engage all your stakeholders to achieve TMF compliance and ensure that there's continued inspection readiness.
Yeah, and I think that's great that you brought up kind of some of the different job levels, because I think so oftentimes and historically, if TMF has been looked at as just like paper pushing or filing, and that, like I said this on Monday, people kind of think of TMF as something that exists in the shadows. That years ago it was that people working in the TMF were holed up in file rooms and really just dealing with the documentation. So I love that you looped in the communication piece, because I think that now, as we're seeing the TMF space really grow and provide a lot more opportunity for career progression and development, there's so many other skills that come into play. And I think, like, well, you said, those entry level roles are definitely focused on some of the more, as I like to call it, like in the weeds of TMF, where you are filing documents, doing QC reviews. As you start to progress into things like project management or even like head of department, you really do have to develop and kind of add some of those other skills, like communication, stakeholder engagement. I've personally experienced, I know, working in TMF, it can be kind of an uphill battle to get people on board with TMF and understanding what it is, why it's important, getting buy-in for additional resourcing needed to support the space. So I think that's a really great point, that those skills can kind of change as you move and advance in your career in the TMF space.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. All right. So, question just came in. So, how do you stand out as an ideal candidate with ample experience but no 4-year degree? So, that's a really good question, and that's definitely something that we see, I think, more and more now. Organizations are looking for that 4-year degree, but I think some great things to highlight, if you don't have that, or other opportunities and other ways that you've kind of broadened your knowledge base. I know there are a lot of opportunities, even outside of the TMF, to get like professional accreditations. When I was a research coordinator, you could get accredited as a research coordinator. We also offer, I'll put this out there, we have our accredited TMF University program, which can be a great option for individuals that are really know that they want to make TMF a career. That was kind of the goal of us developing that program, was really to provide people with that foundational, the knowledge, skills, and behaviors required to be a successful TMF professional. So I think there are other educational opportunities out there and accreditations that you can get, like I said, in TMF, but also just more broadly in the clinical research space. I think that's a really important piece of this puzzle. Like, I think TMF knowledge is one thing, but really it's important to just have general clinical trial knowledge as well, because I think that really is what gives you that understanding of how these documents fit into the overall clinical research and clinical trial process end to end. So by having that familiarity of the clinical trial process, we kind of know why these documents are being created at the different times and things like that. I don't know if Jessica or Lisa, if you have anything to add.
You covered all of that. That's pretty much what I would have said. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, certifications we're looking for. And I also think any industry groups that you could be a part of. The TMF reference model would be a good one to just kind of participate in, attend their meetings, just learning more about TMF and inserting yourself into that conversation.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love bringing up the industry
Yeah.
groups, Jessica, because it's really a great way to stay on top of kind of where we're at.
Mhm.
Things are changed a lot in the TMF space, and just clinical research in general. So that is a great point and a great way to make sure that you're kind of staying ahead of the curve and are up to date with regulatory changes and changes with the reference model, things like that. So yeah, great point, Jessica. All right. All right. So, what are some examples of skills? And this is a nice kind of segue from that last question, where you may have a lot of experience, maybe you have a lot of experience even in other industries. So, what are some skills that you guys see or think translate into the TMF space and kind of TMF roles?
Yeah, I think Lisa touched base on this a little bit earlier, but attention to detail, focus on quality. Quality is a big focus of ours and our team. Time management. We work in a remote environment, so being able to work independently but also staying on task is very important. And ability to see the bigger picture of how you working on or in the TMF and processing the documents, indexing, approval, QC affects the overall health of the TMF for a client.
Yeah, I think those are all great, great skills to highlight, and certainly all critical to being successful working in the TMF space. I think again, I would also highlight their like communication, kind of understanding
Mhm.
how to manage teams, how to manage stakeholders. Like I said, TMF is one of those spaces I know everyone or hope everyone on this call is passionate about, and obviously we all
Yep.
understand the importance of it and how critical it is to the success of a clinical trial. But oftentimes, I think we find that many people outside of TMF management or ClinOps don't see that or don't understand it. So a lot of times we can be, um, I like to say we have to act as the TMF cheerleaders to really get people on board with the TMF and understanding what it is, why it's important, what their role and responsibilities are when it comes to TMF management. So I think being a good communicator, again, understanding your audience, knowing how to kind of tailor that message to whoever we're speaking to. Are we talking to teams that we're trying to train that might need to know a little bit more detail? Are we talking to a functional area where we need to make sure that we're giving them targeted information and training them specifically on their role and responsibilities rather than maybe giving them all of the information on the TMF? Or are we talking to leadership and trying to get buy-in for additional resourcing or budget or whatever that looks like? So that's another one that I would just throw in there as well. I'm a big advocate in the training space for that communication piece.
Absolutely.
Lisa,
And
anything?
I think too, if everybody just listens to what we're talking about is the key words that we're going to use a lot is time management and communication. Those are really kind of big things because like Jessica said, we work remotely. So you have to be able to just really manage that time and communicate with your managers, your project teams and everything. And that'll help you be successful.
Yeah, one other thing that I would actually throw in here too that just came to mind is also the ability to kind of be flexible and adaptable
Yep.
because TMF is one of those areas where we know from regulations that we have to maintain a TMF, but we don't get explicit guidance from any of the regulators on exactly how we need to manage our TMF. So I know having been in the consulting space for the last 8 years, different companies take different approaches to TMF management. So there's certainly not a one size fits all solution. So I think as you're considering kind of your journey in the TMF space and knowing that you may be working at different organizations, that they may take different approaches to TMF management and being able to come in and kind of adapt to those, be able to learn. I think sometimes we get a tendency for people who come into this space to be at times maybe a little bit rigid, and we all want that like right answer or the one way to do things, and it's really not like that. There's a lot of gray space in the TMF. So I think that's another thing, to be able to be flexible and
Mhm.
adaptable, not afraid to make decisions. I think a lot of times we'll get asked things like that, like, well, just tell me how this is supposed to be done. And it's like, okay, well, there's not one way to do a lot of what we do. So I always like to highlight like consistency is what's key. Don't be afraid to make decisions, document that decision, and then just make sure everyone on your team is kind of handling those different aspects of TMF management consistent consistently across the board. So that's another one that just came to mind. Anything else?
Oh,
Oh, Another question just came in. So, what advice would you give to someone who transitioned into another area of the pharma industry for a few years, but would like to transition back into a TMF focused role? That's a great question, and I think that there are a lot of those skills that we just spoke to that you can really highlight. I mean, I think anywhere that you're working in pharma, because we are such a heavily regulated industry, like you really do need to be very quality minded. We need to make sure that all of our ducks in a row. And regardless of what area you're in research, we really need to make sure that we're documenting everything we do. As we say, if it wasn't documented, it didn't happen. So I think you can find threads of TMF management, kind of core principles, if you will, throughout all different areas of the pharma industry. And I think if you're not, that might be a little bit more concerning. So I think anywhere like you can say exactly like that attention to detail, like I said, keeping that kind of quality focus and making sure that everything that we're doing, we've been documenting. I think all of that is really important. And again, you can pull other things too, like managing teams, keeping track of things like metrics and overall health and performance. Those are all critical elements of effectively managing a TMF and TMF health.
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys have anything else.
Managing a team, managing budgets
Yep,
is also important.
Timelines.
Yes.
timelines. Yep.
All that's critical. Even being able to support and train a team to effectively execute their responsibilities as you start to move up in the TMF space into things like project management roles or overseeing departments, you're going to have resources below you that you need to be confident when you assign them to a project that they understand what they need to accomplish, what kind of quality standards they're being held to. So I think all of those skills translate from those other areas of pharma. All right. How would someone who took the certification and has a degree, but not a science degree and doesn't have TMF experience, get a position in the TMF world? So, personally, my recommendation here, I think that the best way to kind of break into TMF is looking at roles like a clinical trial assistant or
Mhm.
associate roles. I think those roles are ideal because it gives you exposure to TMF. You're certainly going to have responsibilities to file documents, perform QC reviews, but you also will likely be involved in kind of broader aspects of just clinical trial management with the support of a clinical trial coordinator or a clinical trial manager. So you kind of get to see the whole clinical research process while also getting familiar with the document. So it's kind of in my mind, that's kind of like a 2 for 1. You get kind of the most bang for your buck with those roles where, like you said, you get not only the TMF and start dipping your toes in that, but you also see that kind of broader clinical research end-to-end process. So I think that's a great way to get in. I know I came in as a research coordinator that was similar, and also just really neat to get to see kind of the site side of things and kind of a different perspective on industry working in site. So research coordinator roles are also awesome opportunities as well. Like I said, I'm a little biased there from where I started.
Yeah, I agree. I think the clinical trial associate is a fantastic place because you learn a lot when you're a CTA. And usually your CTAs are highly involved in the TMF. So that is definitely a great place to start.
Yeah, and not for nothing, it might be one of those. I also think it's nice too because you do get both sides there with the TMF and just trial management. Like you may decide in that role that the documentation piece isn't for you and that you just want to stay on that trial management track and kind of run up through trial coordinator, trial management, and take that path. I know a lot of people that I've worked with over the years think I'm crazy for moving into TMF and we're like, oh my God, all I want to do is trial management. And I look at them and I'm like, oh God, I definitely didn't want to go into trial management. So this was
Right.
kind of the best path. So it gives you that exposure. It's a kind of different professional path that you can take. Yeah. All right, so we'll shift the focus a little bit and start to talk about interviewing. So I know interviews can definitely be a little bit nerve-wracking. So we wanted to talk a little bit, just to, like you said, provide some kind of tips and tricks. So why is it so important to provide kind of specific examples of your experience when you're answering an interviewer's questions?
So, Jay, I think it really demonstrates how you are a good fit for that role, and shows that you've handled similar situations in the past. And don't worry if you haven't encountered the exact same situation that the interviewer may be asking about. You know, I remember a time when I was interviewing someone new to the TMF space, and I asked, about a time when she had to manage competing priorities, and she related it back to her personal life and shared how she had a special needs son who she had to take care of while going to college. So, it's good just to just show how you're going to be able to fit into that role.
Yeah, and I know that for me, I think is always really telling when people are able to relate things back to their individual situation. I think it just provides a lot more kind of color and context around that candidate, their experience. Like I said, I think it's easier to see them fitting into a role when they're able to provide kind of that personal angle on it, or
Mhm.
put that kind of a spin on it where you can see that. And I think sometimes in interviews, I know I've had this experience where you're interviewing with someone and it feels like they're like reading a script back to you, or they've just kind of gone to your company's website and are just kind of parroting things back to you. And I'm like, I really want to get a feel to know a kind of who someone is through that interview process, and kind of what have you actually done. And like Lisa said, even if it's not the exact same situation we're talking about, just give me a little bit more context about like what you've actually done professionally. And also, I like people to bring things about, like, think about what are some of your like biggest achievements, what are you most proud of that you've done professionally, and bring those as examples as well. Think about challenging situations that you've encountered, and don't be afraid to speak to those, and how you address the issue and were able to have come out on the other side. Those are things I think that it's all really helpful to share when you have that specific examples that you can highlight in your career journey. And even if it's in a space that's like, maybe it wasn't a position that was specifically related to TMF, but that's another way that we can kind of bring that past experience or experience in other types roles, whether it's, again, I know we had the question, whether it's another area of the pharma industry, whether it's a totally different industry. There are a lot of situations that you can pull from that will translate and highlight some of those skills and things that we talked about earlier.
Yeah. Well, even from my own experience, Jackie, when I first came into this, I was a stay-at-home mom. I took a big leap of faith that this pharmaceutical company was going to hire me, and I was extremely fortunate. But I had the experience of managing my children at the time, and my husband and my home and all that stuff. And I mean, I was doing some, small business stuff on the side, so I had that to refer to too. But, I just related it back to what I knew at that moment, and I got the job, and here I am. So, sometimes we don't have everything we need for that specific position or whatever. But if you have some items that are relatable, it's good to discuss those during your interview.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's see. All right. So what are some, I think this is a piece of the interview that often gets overlooked or is kind of an afterthought. But what are some important questions that a candidate that's interviewing for a TMF role should ask during their interview?
So I think that you should always ask about the culture. How is that culture at that, that company? Is the organization one that values and sees the importance of the TMF, or are you going to run into a lot of challenges and have to champion for that message of the TMF? I also like to ask about what the biggest challenge that you think you'll face in the role, and also the highest priority. What will the highest priority be when you're coming on board? Are you going to be expected to go straight forward into something, or, like kind of what is that expectation when you first start your onboarding process? And is there an onboarding process? Maybe not every company has that. I know we here at LMK do, but that doesn't mean, other companies have that. But I think those are really important things, especially about the culture of how things, are dealt with, how, maybe even some perks. Like we have perks, we have TMF University, we have, different things like that. And, that's important.
Yeah, one other
Yeah.
thing that, oh, go ahead, Jessica.
Sorry, Jackie. And I just think that, so I get this when I'm connecting with candidates a lot. They're asking, what does a day in the life look like for
That's exactly
a
where I was
support
going.
analyst, for a project manager, right? And so really understanding and asking that, what is going to be expected of me day to day, and what does that look like from 8 to 5? We work globally, we have people in different time zones and things like that. So that's definitely a great question to ask in your interview.
Mm-hmm.
Took the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly what I was going to say. The day in the life piece. And also, like, one other thing that sometimes I'll ask too, or I think is good to ask is, what's the interviewer's favorite part about working at a particular organization, or what's something that they found is maybe different working at this company than at past organizations. I think these are all kind of creative ways to get kind of a view or a little bit of a peek into that company culture. Also, sometimes one thing too, I would say, if you're interviewing with multiple people, it can be also helpful to ask the same question to multiple different people who may be interviewing you, just to get kind of the different perspectives, see if there's some alignment. Do people kind of seem like they share the same vibe at that company? Are you getting drastically different answers? All of this stuff can be really telling when you're looking at a new company or a new role.
Absolutely.
All right. Any other questions you guys have for us? Oh, wow. We got a question about similar to this on Monday, about kind of AI and how AI is transforming the TMF management landscape, and how expertise in AI or eTMF tools can increase your employability in the TMF field. From my perspective, I think we're kind of right on like the precipice or a cutting edge of AI. I know we've seen a lot of the eTMF vendors kind of introduce AI bots and things to help with some of that initial maybe filing and QC steps. But I wouldn't say, or I personally haven't seen kind of like AI focused roles. And I know this has been kind of an area, I think, of concern, not just for our industry, but in many industries across the board, that like, oh man, like AI is going to take off. It's going to take our jobs. We're not going to be needed in this space anymore. And I think particularly around like TMF, and where a lot of people, I think, falsely assume that this is more of like an administrative type space, and like AI can easily come in and do all of our jobs. I don't think that that will ever be the case. I think that we may see kind of some of the roles in our space change, and that maybe we can offload some of that more kind of administrative type activities, like that maybe initial indexing and filing could be done by an AI bot, but then individuals working in the space would really need to develop Their like skills for oversight. I know I was at a conference this year and someone talked about looking at AI bots almost as like robot employees, and that we may come a time where we're kind of managing these bots and that we're still kind of that human in the loop that has that oversight of what these AI bots are doing. So I think, again, it comes back to really highlighting that kind of focus on quality oversight. Even if we are kind of engaging with AI or that's starting to come into our space, again, just being able to kind of effectively oversee and manage that just in the way that we would with some of our regular team members. If we started seeing quality issues, flagging those up, addressing them, making sure that those bots are kind of learning effectively what we want them to do. I don't know if you guys have anything to add, but I have not seen any like specifically like AI like focused roles or anything in the TMF space yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything yet. Yet
Yeah,
being the key word.
Yes, I know.
Mhm.
It's probably coming, but
Yes.
okay. For individuals with minimal TMF networking contacts outside of their current organization, what do you recommend that they do to get noticed by a new organization? I would highlight like what Jessica mentioned earlier, industry groups like the CDISC TMF reference model community is a great group to get involved with. They have regular meetings that you can attend with updates on what's going on in the TMF space, updates to the reference model. Now that the reference model is under CDISC and moving towards a standard, like I said, they really kind of have their finger on the pulse of industry. And it also does give you a great opportunity to engage with other people working in the TMF space. I would say that's probably the biggest industry group that's like TMF focused. So I would definitely recommend joining that group. There's forums available that you can engage with other people, ask questions. Some of the eTMF vendors also have kind of collaboration spaces and communities where you can engage with other people who are using the same eTMF technology that you have. Again, a place to pose questions, engage. I don't know budget wise if it's in the cards for all organizations, but the other thing that you could pose to a manager or someone is if you could go to a TMF conference. There's a TMF summit every year. The CDISC is now putting on two TMF interchanges every year, one in the US, one in the EU. The US one is actually coming up in October in Arizona. So those are other great opportunities to not only just learn about what's going on in the space from attending the different sessions and presentations, but also to network and talk with other people engaged in this space. And there's people with years and years and years of dedicated TMF experience that attend those events. It's actually a pretty close community. Once you start to get involved, you'll see a lot of the same faces and names and things. And I will say, I love our community. I think everyone is very, very engaged and supportive and is happy to kind of share their knowledge and experience and kind of help you. So I mean, definitely recommend.
Yeah, also, if you can't go to those summits and forums, there's so much blogs and YouTube stuff that, you can also you can network through there as well. You see a lot of probably the same names. Like Jackie said, we're very kind of a close-knit community, but that's another way if you're not able to make it to those different summits and forums and stuff.
Yeah, even like looking at companies that provide like free webinars or office hours. I
Yep.
know Trial Interactive has been doing a lot of series of office hours, free webinars that you can attend, ask questions. So there's a lot of opportunity out there for learning and engaging with the community. Good question. Keeping an eye on the time. Anything else? Oh. What are the most common mistakes you see on resumes for TMF roles and how candidates can avoid them? From my perspective here, I would say, I think if you're not looking, particularly for someone who may not have kind of dedicated TMF experience in their recent roles, I think those individuals who don't make that effort to really kind of tease out those responsibilities or skills that
Yeah.
tailor to the TMF, that can be a big kind of detriment. Like I said, I know sometimes it can be difficult if you don't have, say, like your last role isn't explicitly related to TMF. It can sometimes be difficult to show like how that translates to the TMF. So I've seen on some resumes where people will put like a short, like almost like an intro or like a summary paragraph at the top that can provide you with an opportunity to really highlight kind of how skills from your non-TMF roles fit into the TMF space, or kind of highlights like why you're looking to get into the TMF. Obviously, we don't want you to write a book there, but again, if you can have just like a short paragraph that kind of ties all those threads together and really kind of indicates how
Mm.
your past experience translates to the TMF, or pulls out those skills or knowledge that you have that you think translates.
And I think not using a blanket resume for every job that you're applying for, right? So make it
Yeah.
customized in a way to each role that you're applying for. Look at what their responsibilities are asking, that this is what you're going to be doing. And really
Yeah.
think about how, if we're saying, perform document level QC, how can you, in your past experience or in your other responsibilities, really tie that in to what the responsibility of this new role that you're applying for,
Mhm.
similar to what Jackie is saying, but not having a standard resume applying to 10 different roles, right? Make it
Yeah.
customized. Take the time to
Yeah.
make it customized to the role that you're applying for.
I think also too, just highlighting like achievements or things that you're proud of in some of your different job roles, rather than just putting a list of just bulleted responsibilities where essentially you've just cut and pasted your job description from a
Mhm.
past role and put it in
Yeah.
your resume. Like Jessica said, really customize and think about like, what are those things that I really want to call out here from this role? It doesn't have to just be a laundry list of I did X, Y, and Z. Like really make it showcase what you're proud of and what you've kind of accomplished in past roles, even if those are not directly related to TMF.
And
Awesome.
proofread, please, for grammatical errors.
Yes.
Oh, I know, big pet peeve, especially in the documentation space where QC is what
Yes.
we're supposed to be great at. No
Yeah.
typos.
Yeah.
That's also a great, great point. I know that can be a turn off. Um, all right. So I'm just looking at the time. I know we're coming close to the end. So I just want to thank my co-hosts, Lisa and Jessica, and everyone who joined us today on the live stream. We hope that you found the information that we shared helpful in your own career journeys. If you have any additional questions or anything that you didn't get to ask us today, or that you think of after we close today's session, feel free to submit those questions to our hello@lmkcrc.com inbox, and we'll get back to you. I'm also really excited to announce today that if you're looking for kind of additional support with interviews or resumes or your LinkedIn profile, I'm very excited to say that we are actually going to be launching a new series of TMF career services starting next month. So, like I said, whether you're looking to revamp your resume or update your LinkedIn profile, prepare for an upcoming interview that you have, help to improve your communication or presentation skills, we've got you covered. We have a whole series of new services that we'll be offering. Keep an eye out for more information. We'll be posting on these services when they go live. We'll also be hosting a live stream town hall on Thursday, September 19th, where we'll be able to answer any of the questions that you might have on these new service offerings. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. And be sure to join the last TMF Career Week session tomorrow, where my colleagues Ben, Meredith, and Tony will be discussing how to navigate the TMF career ladder. So thank you again to you both and everyone who joined us today. We had some great questions. And I hope everyone has a great rest of the week.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.